10 terrifying moments when nature unleashed its fury caught on camera. Hello, dear viewers of Discovery Fact. Nature has many gentle and awe-inspiring moments, but there are also times when it unleashes its fury through storms, tsunamis, earthquakes, floods, droughts, and other disasters occurring all around the world. Few people realize that some natural disasters are actually caused by human hands. Every day, every hour, we are unknowingly weakening the protective shield around our planet and destroying the balance of our ecosystems. The images of Mother Nature's fury below are just a small glimpse of what humanity is being forced to endure. From releasing pollutants that contaminate the environment and damaging the ozone layer to the greenhouse effect and global warming. So, let's join Discovery Fact as we look back at some terrifying moments when Mother Nature unleashed her fury, seemingly swallowing everything in her path in today's video. A disaster that swallowed an American city. July 5th, 2011, became one of the worst and most memorable days in the history of Phoenix, Arizona. A massive dust storm suddenly swept in. The wall of dust rose 4,921 feet high, stretched about 62 miles wide, and raced forward at roughly 49 miles per hour, seemingly swallowing the entire city, which covers about 518 square miles. Not long after the dust storm swept through, thousands of tons of dust damaged the electrical systems of 9,000 homes, forcing the city's international airport to shut down for 20 minutes. The natural disaster sent Phoenix's 1.5 million residents into extreme panic. Meteorologists said they had never witnessed anything this terrifying in 30 years. A specialist from the National Weather Service in Phoenix said that the dust was so dense and moved with such incredible force that the entire city, which had been brightly lit, suddenly seemed to plunge into darkness. People walking along the streets were struck in the face by stinging winds and dust. Trees were knocked down. Traffic descended into chaos. Fires broke out in some parts of the city. Everything was as devastating as a powerful hurricane sweeping through. The dust penetrated everything, and the most dangerous place it could enter was the lungs of millions of Phoenix residents. William Sprigg, a scientist at the University of Arizona's Institute of Atmospheric Physics, said that a dust storm is an extremely toxic mixture of fungi, heavy metals from pollutants, chemicals, and bacteria. Once it enters the human body, it can cause cardiovascular and respiratory diseases, eye irritation, and many other potentially serious consequences. These massive dust storms, also known as sandstorms, commonly occur in regions of the Middle East, Australia, Africa, and Phoenix, Arizona. The disaster in Phoenix occurred during Arizona's monsoon season, which runs from early June through late September. Dust storms are a type of natural disaster that commonly occurs in desert regions. History has witnessed terrifying sandstorms that have buried thousands of people. One notable example was the dust storm that occurred in 525 BC, which reportedly killed an army of 50,000 healthy soldiers belonging to Cambyses I during an expedition. Modern scientists say that dust storms are now occurring more frequently and with greater intensity than they did 50 years ago. Therefore, to minimize casualties as much as possible, during the summer, you should pay attention to the warning signs that a dust storm may be approaching so you can take shelter in time. Before a dust storm arrives, the surroundings may suddenly become unusually quiet, while the air can feel strangely oppressive. Dust storms often begin as a small cloud of dust. Gradually, as powerful winds pick up more and more dust, the cloud grows larger and larger, eventually engulfing everything in its path. If you encounter a dust storm, the first thing you need to do is remain calm. Then, find something to cover your face and sit facing away from the direction of the wind, helping to prevent breathing difficulties and keeping dust out of your eyes, nose, and throat. Never try to outrun a sandstorm, because with its extremely high speed and enormous reach, you could become exhausted long before you manage to escape the storm. If possible, seek shelter in a ditch or depression in the ground, sit facing away from the wind, and carefully cover your face while waiting for the storm to pass. More than 19,700 acres of forest burned in California. The devastating wildfire in California lasted for 5 days, beginning on July 22nd, and burned and destroyed more than 19,700 acres of forest in Yosemite National Park. The wildfire also damaged 116 residential and commercial structures and forced 10,000 people to evacuate urgently, fueled by a mega drought driven by climate change. Low humidity combined with strong winds caused the ground to become hotter and tree roots to dry out. As a result, the fires became almost impossible to control and spread at an astonishing speed. Joe Amador, a firefighter with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, said that it took only 24 hours for the oak fire to burn through nearly 9,900 acres of forest near Yosemite National Park, accounting for almost half of the total damage and becoming the largest wildfire in California that year. Over the past 2 decades, prolonged dry weather has caused California's water supplies for household use and irrigation to decline severely during the summer. At the same time, about 30% of California's water supply comes from snowmelt in the Sierra Nevada mountains in the western United States. However, the snowpack in these mountains had completely melted by May of that year. CN reported that scientists had found the latest megadrought in California to be the worst the region had experienced in 1,200 years. Amador expressed the situation this way: "We are living through extreme conditions. Every year, we talk about new devastating records, and this year is no different. It only proves once again that Mother Nature can give us everything, and just as quickly and easily, she can take everything away." Classic bridge collapses in China. Back in the 1990s, China experienced an economic boom unlike anything seen in many other countries. A massive construction boom spread across the nation. The government gave the green light to hundreds of construction projects, including numerous bridges. Everything seemed to be going well until April 2011, when a section of the Korla Peacock Dragon Bridge in Xinjiang broke apart and fell onto the riverbank. Less than 2 months later, the Tongyu Bridge in Jiangsu collapsed. Then, just 3 days later, another bridge in Fujian collapsed. And this was reportedly the second time that particular bridge had failed. 3 bridge collapses in a single year were certainly not good news. In August 2012, a newly built, 328-foot-long connecting section of the Yangming Bridge in Harbin suddenly collapsed. The bridge had cost $300 million to build and had been officially opened less than a year earlier. With so many bridge collapses occurring, panic began to spread. The government initially blamed overloaded trucks, but the frightening truth was that bridges across China had actually been collapsing for years. In July 2007, a section of the Zhujiang Bridge in Guangdong Province was struck by a ship, causing part of the bridge to collapse into the river, even though it was supposedly designed to withstand such an impact. In August 2007, a truck caused a bridge to collapse in Taiwan, Shangji. A few months later, in October 2007, a viaduct in Baotou suddenly overturned. Then, in 2009, a 598-foot-long ramp bridge at a toll station on the Jinjiang Expressway collapsed. This raised a major question. Why were modern bridges costing millions of dollars collapsing when only a few overloaded vehicles used them? According to public opinion in China, there was only one answer: corruption. In 2016, a transportation official was accused of accepting $4.4 million in bribes in exchange for allowing companies to use substandard construction materials. And that was only the tip of the iceberg. Between 2014 and 2017, 54% of the 12,759 bribery cases prosecuted in China were related to construction projects. Poor quality materials and extremely rushed construction schedules were believed to have contributed to the collapse of newly built bridges within their first few years of service, and the consequences continue to be felt to this day. The 2010 Nashville flood. 6 years ago, Nashville was hit by a flood unlike anything the city had ever experienced. Lives were lost and homes were devastated, but Nashville managed to rise above the tragedy. Nashville shattered nearly every imaginable rainfall record over the weekend of May 1st, 2010. According to the National Weather Service, 13.57 inches of rain was recorded over a 36-hour period. The combined rainfall over those 2 days was more than double Nashville's previous 48-hour rainfall record. 26 people died in the flooding across Tennessee and Kentucky, including 11 in the Nashville area. The body of the final victim, 39-year-old Danny Tomlinson, was found on September 26, 2010, nearly 5 months after the flood. Nearly 11,000 properties were damaged or destroyed by the flooding, and 10,000 people were forced to leave their homes. The flood caused more than $2 billion in damage to personal property and $120 million in damage to Nashville's public infrastructure. 1 year after the flood, the Tennessean, citing the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, reported that between 300 and 400 businesses were still closed, while 1,528 jobs were considered very difficult to bring back. The Cumberland River was particularly devastating. It crested in downtown Nashville at 51.86 feet at 6 p.m. on May 3, 2010. This was the highest water level recorded since the Cumberland River Dam system was constructed in the late 1950s and early 1960s. The previous record was 47.6 feet, set on March 15, 1975. In addition, floodwaters reached 40 feet, submerging Opry mills under up to 10 feet of muddy water and forcing the 1.2 million square foot shopping mall to remain closed for nearly 2 years. Before the flood, the shopping center generated an average of $279 million in annual sales and employed approximately 3,000 people. An estimated $200 million in repairs was completed before the mall finally reopened in March 2012. The once-in-a-century flood in Sichuan, China. Early in the morning of August 18th, local time, the Qinghai River, which flows through Leshan City in Sichuan Province, experienced an unprecedented flood peak, the highest ever recorded in its history. Shortly afterward, Sichuan Province and Leshan City successively issued Level 1 emergency flood response alerts. This was also the first time since the province was established that Sichuan had issued a Level 1 flood warning. Floodwaters rushing down from upstream caused water levels in the Min River, Qinghai River, and Dadu River in Sichuan to rise dramatically, with the water reaching the base of the famous Leshan giant Buddha statue. According to Leshan's disaster prevention and control authorities, the main culprit behind the city's severe flooding was the Qinghai River. The middle and lower reaches of the Qinghai River are areas in Sichuan that frequently receive heavy rainfall. At 4 p.m. local time on August 10th, Sichuan issued a blue alert for heavy rainfall along the Qinghai River. From August 17th to 18, the Qinghai River Basin experienced torrential rainfall, with some areas receiving exceptionally heavy downpours, causing water levels to rise rapidly. Topography was another factor contributing to the severe flooding caused by the Qinghai River in Leshan and Sichuan. Located in the rugged transition zone between the Sichuan Plateau and the Chengdu Plain, the region has steep terrain, allowing floodwaters in the Qinghai River to flow at extremely high speeds. By 8 a.m. local time on August 18th, the flood discharge of the Qinghai River had reached 18,000 cubic meters per second, nearly twice the combined flood discharge of the Min River and Dadu River. Under the enormous pressure from the Qinghai River flooding, combined with additional floodwaters from the Min and Dadu rivers, it was easy to understand just how difficult it was for Leshan, Sichuan to control the flooding. Local media described the disaster as a once-in-a-century flood in Leshan. Sichuan Province urgently evacuated 100,000 residents to safe shelters. Hydroelectric reservoirs across the province were doing everything possible to reduce the flood peak and control the flow of water. The Sichuan government said it had established an optimized emergency response mechanism for flood control and drought relief in 2005. Previously, in 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2018, the province had only activated Level 2 emergency flood responses. But this year, the Level 1 emergency flood response was activated. According to Sichuan's Emergency Flood and Drought Control Plan, a Level 1 disaster response alert is activated only when an extremely severe flood or drought occurs. The bridge that collapsed twice while still under construction in India. The Agiwani-Sultanganj Bridge over the Ganges River in Bihar, eastern India, collapsed at around 6 p.m. on June 4, 2023. Many local residents had gathered around the area and were recording videos when the incident occurred. According to local media reports, the bridge, which was more than 656 feet long, had previously developed cracks. Another section of the bridge had already collapsed in April 2022. A politician from the ruling party claimed that corruption was the reason behind the bridge's collapse. In October 2022, the historic suspension bridge over the Machu River in India collapsed, killing 141 people. Surveillance footage showed the suspension bridge shaking violently before its cables snapped, sending hundreds of people plunging into the river. One of the suspected causes was that several young men had stood in the middle of the bridge and repeatedly kicked the suspension cables, causing the structure to sway. A similar phenomenon occurred during the dramatic swaying of the Millennium Bridge in London, England, in 2000. Researchers pointed to the role of the crowd effect. At the time, thousands of visitors flooded onto the newly opened structure, causing it to sway slightly. If a few people happened to synchronize their footsteps with the movement of the bridge, the structure could become increasingly unstable. Once the oscillation reached a certain level, the swaying became strong enough to cause everyone on the bridge to unconsciously synchronize their steps, further intensifying the problem. The horrific red mud flood in Hungary. The Achaka alumina plant disaster was a red mud spill from a series of toxic waste reservoirs at the Achakai plant in western Hungary. At 12:25 p.m. local time on October 4, 2010, the northwest corner of the dam surrounding Reservoir No. 10 collapsed, releasing approximately 1 million cubic meters of liquid waste from the red mud reservoir. The red mud surged outward in waves 3 to 6.5 feet high, flooding several nearby communities, including the village of Kollontar and the town of Devexer. At least 9 people were killed and 122 others were injured. Approximately 15.4 square miles of land were initially affected by the disaster. Most notably, the toxic mud reached the Danube River on October 7, 2010. The red mud released in the disaster was waste generated by the Bayer process, in which bauxite is refined into alumina, a form of aluminum oxide. The mud consists primarily of non-aluminum compounds contained in bauxite ore that are separated during the refining process. Its distinctive red color comes mainly from hydrated iron IE oxide, along with various other compounds. When initially discharged, the mud was highly alkaline and was stored in an open-air reservoir. It was estimated that approximately 33 million tons of red mud were stored within the Achakai plant complex. The mud flooded roads in Kollontar, where 4 people were confirmed dead, before spreading into Devexer, where the force of the flow was powerful enough to sweep away cars and small trucks. The official cause of death of the 4 victims had not yet been released. However, a spokesperson for Hungary's National Directorate General for Disaster Management said they may have been swept away by the mud. 6 other people were reported missing within 24 hours of the disaster. The highly alkaline red mud was considered dangerous and could cause chemical burns upon contact if it was not immediately washed off with water. According to the mayor of Devexer, approximately 80 to 90 people had been hospitalized with chemical burns, and it could take several days for the full effects of the burns to become apparent. However, Magyar Aluminium, the company operating the plant, argued that the mud was not classified as a hazardous substance under European standards. Nevertheless, initial measurements indicated that the mud was extremely alkaline, with an AAFAF of 13. The chemical waste in the red mud devastated virtually all life in the Markel River. The contaminated flow reached the Danube River on October 7th, prompting warnings for downstream countries to prepare emergency plans to deal with the pollution. By October 11th, the Hungarian government announced that the managing director of Magyar Aluminium had been arrested and would face criminal charges for allegedly causing a public disaster. The Hungarian government planned to focus on providing compensation for those affected, protecting employment, and identifying other locations that could potentially be at risk in the future in order to prevent a disaster of this scale from happening again. Morocco's strongest earthquake in a century. A magnitude 6.8 earthquake struck the high Atlas mountain region of Morocco late on September 8th. Local time, killing at least 1,037 people and injuring more than 1,204 others, including 721 who were in critical condition. The initial death toll was 269, but it rose rapidly throughout the day as the North African nation launched rescue efforts. The number of casualties was expected to continue increasing because most of the disaster-stricken areas were difficult to access. Videos appeared on social media that were described as capturing the moment a house collapsed during the earthquake, accompanied by loud screams as people hurriedly fled the scene. The tremors were felt in the capital, Rabat, as well as other cities, including Marrakesh, Casablanca, Agadir, and Kenitra. Many residents left their homes and spent the night outdoors, helping clear away the rubble. The death toll from this natural disaster had surpassed that of the 2004 earthquake that struck Morocco's Mediterranean coast, which killed more than 600 people and injured more than 900 others. Dozens of buildings collapsed in seconds. Just 3 weeks after the devastating earthquake on February 6th, Turkey was struck by yet another earthquake in the Malatya area on February 27th. Specifically, around noon on February 27th, local time, Turkey experienced another earthquake measuring approximately magnitude 5.6 at a depth of 4 miles. The epicenter was identified in the Malatya area, killing at least one person, injuring 110 others, and causing 29 buildings to collapse in an instant. This was believed to be the third major earthquake to hit Turkey that February, following the first magnitude 7.8 earthquake on February 6th and the second earthquake on the evening of February 20th. Together, these disasters pushed the death toll to nearly 50,000 people. Videos from the scene of the February 27th earthquake showed numerous buildings collapsing within seconds, sending thick clouds of dust into the air as terrified residents ran frantically for safety. Other videos showed rescue teams and local residents desperately searching for people trapped beneath the rubble and carrying the injured to safer locations. According to statistics, the repeated earthquakes left the country in devastation. More than 160,000 buildings containing 520,000 apartments had collapsed or suffered severe damage, while the death toll continued to rise. The disaster was considered the worst catastrophe in the nation's history. In addition, the earthquakes had a profound psychological impact on children and survivors, who were forced to endure the loss of loved ones, as well as shortages of essential necessities such as food and shelter. Following the latest earthquake, Turkey's Disaster and Emergency Management Authority immediately issued a new warning on Twitter, urging people not to enter or even stand near buildings in earthquake-affected areas. Terrifying lightning strike hits a plane in the Netherlands. Traveling during bad weather always carries hidden dangers, especially when you are sitting aboard a Boeing 777 preparing to fly into a charged thundercloud. According to Russia Today on November 14th, footage showing a KLM aircraft being struck by lightning had spread rapidly across the internet in recent days. The KLM Boeing had just taken off from Amsterdam Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands when it flew into a charged cloud and was struck by lightning directly on the nose. Fortunately, the Boeing 777 suffered no damage after being struck. It continued climbing and safely landed at Lima Airport in Peru 12.5 hours later. KLM confirmed that its aircraft had been struck by lightning but said there were no serious problems. This raises an obvious question. Why were the aircraft and its passengers unharmed after such an incident? In fact, aircraft can even be struck by lightning while parked at an airport. Aircraft are typically struck by lightning at certain points, such as the nose and wingtips. Because there are no openings through the aircraft's fuselage, after lightning strikes, the electrical current continues traveling along the surface of the aircraft's outer aluminum skin before exiting into the surrounding environment through a pointed area at the aircraft's tail. Today, although lightning strikes on aircraft are not uncommon, serious incidents are relatively rare, with only a small number of cases recorded each year worldwide. Even so, there have been cases in which pilots reported that the aircraft's electrical systems and some onboard equipment experienced interference after being struck by lightning. In reality, aircraft crashing after being struck by lightning has happened. It is not simply a rumor. Aviation history recorded one such case in the United States in 1967, and more recently, there was a Colombian aircraft crash in 2010. The cause was reportedly linked to lightning striking the aircraft's fuel tank, causing it to explode and resulting in a tragedy. The fuselages of modern aircraft, such as Boeing's Dreamliner series and newer generations of Airbus aircraft, are made largely from composite materials covered with a layer of copper to protect the interior from electrical currents caused by lightning strikes. The fuel tanks are also protected with metal, while the aircraft's windows and doors are designed with materials capable of withstanding extremely high temperatures, up to about 48,600 degrees Fahrenheit. That is why, today, passengers can generally feel confident about the safety of flying into a charged cloud, even if the aircraft is unfortunately struck by lightning. It is clear that human beings and the natural world coexist side by side. Without nature, humanity could not survive. If we fail to respect the natural world, we will ultimately destroy our own lives. In the face of nature's fury, human beings become even smaller, and at times, almost powerless. From violent storms and terrifying tornadoes to lightning strikes that happen in the blink of an eye, these are among the moments that remind us of Mother Nature's wrath and reveal just how tremendous her power can be. And the videos you have just seen are some of the clearest evidence of that. What do you think about these terrifying moments? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to give Discovery Fact a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next fascinating discoveries. And now, goodbye, and see you again soon.